Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a topic that's really captivated people forever. Immortality.
Right, that idea of living forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this exploration was actually sparked by you, our listener. So we've gathered, well, quite a few sources to try and unravel some of the legends, especially around one guy, Nicolas Flamel.
Yeah, Flamel's central here. We've got a Listverse article that touches on 10 figures linked to immortality, sort of setting the scene.
Okay.
Then we have bits and pieces specifically on the Flamel legend from different places. Listverse again, Medill University, Wikipedia, even the Wizarding World.
Oh, interesting. Harry Potter connection.
Definitely. And, get this, a 17th century text that claims to be Flamel's own account. Plus, some context on alchemy's rise, and another piece digging into the Flamel story's origins.
Wow, okay. So our mission is basically to wade through all this, try to figure out what's fact, what's fiction.
And see what pops out. Could be some surprises.
Absolutely. So maybe start with that list first piece, just to get a feel for the different kinds of immortality claims out there.
Sure. It gives a good spread. You've got, like, religious figures, the three Nephites in Mormon belief, supposed to stick around until the second coming.
Right.
Then mythological ones like Memnon from Greek myth. And then there are these stranger historical cases, like Leonard Jones.
Leonard Jones. Who was he?
A 19th century American politician, claimed he was immortal, ran for office on it.
Seriously?
Yeah.
How'd that work out?
Well, he died at 71, so not great for the immortality claim,
Yeah.
but it shows how varied these ideas are.
Yeah, definitely. Sets the stage nicely.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does alchemy fit into this? That McGill excerpt seems key for understanding Flamel's time.
It really is. Alchemy back then wasn't just, mystical mumbo-jumbo to everyone. There was a kind of logic to it for the time.
Oh, so?
Well, gold doesn't rust, doesn't tarnish. It's incorruptible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they figured if you could understand how to make gold...
Maybe you can make people incorruptible too. Make them last forever.
Exactly. Longevity. It was tied together. The quest for the Philosopher's Stone wasn't just about wealth. It was often about life extension, too. They were experimenting with things like mercury and sulfur, trying to crack the code.
It makes sense when you put it like that drive for permanence.
Right. And gold was the ultimate symbol of permanence back then. So transmuting lead into gold wasn't just about getting rich. It was about mastering nature's secrets, maybe even life itself.
Okay, so that's the backdrop. Now, Flamel himself, Wikipedia gives us the basic facts.
Yeah, the historical baseline. Nicolas Flamel, real guy, lived in Paris, worked as a public scribe, born around 1330, died 1418. We even know where his house was.
A real person, a real house. Pretty ordinary, sounds like.
Pretty ordinary, yeah. A scribe, landowner, married to Perenelle. They were known for their piety and charitable donations, actually.
So how does he become this legendary alchemist? The True Story article tackles that.
It does. It suggests the legend really took root long after he died, like centuries later, in the Renaissance and beyond. It seems people, especially those interested in esoteric stuff, started looking at the carvings on funerary monuments the Flamels had donated. Stuff in Parisian cemeteries.
Yep.
These carvings had standard Christian symbols, serpents, dragons, figures. But later folks started saying, this isn't just religious art, this is coded alchemical language.
Reading secrets into it.
Pretty much. That cemetery, the Holy Innocent Cemetery, became kind of a hotspot for occult speculation. And by the late 1500s, the story starts forming. Flamel must have possessed some secret knowledge, maybe a hidden book.
The Philosopher's Stone book.
A Philosopher's Stone book, exactly. The idea emerges that Flamel found the secret to transmutation and maybe even immortality.
And this ties into that 17th century autobiography, The Exposition.
Yes, that's where the story gets really detailed.
Mhm.
This text, supposedly written by Flamel, pops up in the 1600s. It claims he bought this ancient gilded book.
Written by Abraham the Jew.
That's the one, full of strange figures and writing he couldn't understand. So the story goes he spends years trying to figure it out.
And then the journey to Spain. We have details on that from the Testament text.
Yeah, the account of Nicolas Flamel's section within that testament. It claims he went on a pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela, hoping maybe to find someone in Spain's Jewish communities who could decipher it.
Did he? According to the story.
The story says yes. On his way back in Lyon, he meets a Jewish physician, Master Kenchis, who supposedly recognized the figures from the book and started translating it for him.
Wow. Quite an elaborate tale.
It really is. It mentions him struggling for 6 years before the trip, just staring at these symbols. It adds this layer of dedication and struggle.
But you mentioned earlier this text, the Testament and the Exposition.
Yeah.
they're probably not actually from the 14th or 15th century.
That's the historical consensus,
No.
yeah. Looking at the language, the references, scholars are pretty sure these texts were written in the 17th century, long after Flamel died. They were attributed to him to give them weight.
So the whole detailed story of the book, The Journey, Master Kench's, likely fiction created later.
Highly likely. It's part of the legend building, not historical fact about the man himself.
Okay, that's crucial. But let's still look at what this testament claims Flamel discovered. Treat it like, the core of the legend itself.
Right. So in this text, Flamel says he's writing it for his nephew in 1414, after Pernell died, to pass on the secret of the powder of projection.
When?
The powder of projection, basically the philosopher's stone in powdered form, the substance that performs the transmutation.
Got it.
He starts by saying you need prayer, need to understand nature's truth, which he identifies as Mercury, sun, and moon, classic alchemical principles.
Sun and moon often meaning gold and silver.
Yeah.
And Mercury, quicksilver.
Usually, yes, though Mercury could also mean a kind of spiritual essence or prime matter. It's complicated. He even mentions his own 93.5 years of error trying to mix quicksilver, moon, and sun without the right catalyst for the mercury.
So even in the legend, it wasn't easy.
Not at all. He stresses needing a metallic agent to fortify the mercury. He calls it Saturnia Royale.
Royal Saturn, lid.
Often linked to lead, yes. He says you use this agent to open gold and silver. Then there's this complex process of strengthening the mercury, marrying young god Mercury with philosophical Mercury repeatedly using a key or a sharp steel sword.
Sounds very symbolic.
Highly symbolic. This supposedly creates a double and triple skin, which he links back to an image of a rose bush in that book by Abraham the Jew. It's all very layered.
Okay, so you strengthen the mercury, then what?
Then prepare non-vulgar, sun and moon basically, purified or philosophically prepared gold and silver. You dry the mixture, get their philosophical lead, distill the mercury out. He also mentions needing a specific mineral that dissolves everything except gold and silver to prepare the quicksilver correctly.
It sounds like a recipe, but incredibly cryptic.
Exactly. He says once you have these prime agents prepared right, you just follow the book's directions and boom, you achieve the magistery, the great work.
And did he claim to achieve it?
Oh, absolutely. Big claims in the Testament. He says his first projection was in 1382, turned 1.5 pounds of mercury into pure silver. Wow. Then, later, he projected onto silver, turning it into pure gold. Claims he did it 3 times, with Pernell helping.
And he wanted to share this. Why?
His stated reason is noble. So others who succeed will use the immense wealth for good, helping the poor, funding hospitals, churches, a sort of alchemical philanthropy.
Ties back to the historical Flamel's known piety, maybe. Makes the legend more believable.
Could be a deliberate choice by the 17th century author, yeah. Weaving in known facts.
And there's something about the text being in code.
Right at the end, there's a note added later, claiming the original instructions were written in code in the margins of a psalm book, only deciphered in 1758. Adds more mystery.
More layers. But again, we circle back this whole detailed account. Probably a 17th century invention.
That's what the evidence strongly suggests. The true story source points out linguistic tells historical inconsistencies. It just doesn't line up with 15th century reality.
So why? Why invent this whole thing around Flamel? Why did it catch on? The medievalist.net piece gives some context there, right? About alchemy's appeal.
Definitely. It reminds us that in the 14th century, Flamel's actual time, there was serious interest in alchemy, partly for economic reasons. England, for example, faced shortages of gold and silver coinage.
So finding a way to make more gold wasn't just some fantasy. It was potentially state-altering.
Potentially. Kings and nobles sponsored alchemists. The belief in transmutation was real and tied to practical needs. So the idea of someone actually succeeding, that would have been incredibly powerful. It explains why a legend like Flamel's could endure.
It fills a need, a desire, both for wealth and, as we said, maybe for longer life.
Exactly. The legend provided a hero, someone who supposedly cracked the code.
And then, centuries later, popular culture picks it up, the Wizarding World source.
Right, Harry Potter. Flamel's the maker of the Philosopher's Stone in that universe, the one who achieved immortality, living for over 600 years with Pernell. That brought the legend to a massive global audience.
It's kind of amazing. A 14th century Parisian scribe becomes this icon of eternal life, largely thanks to 17th century texts and 21st century fiction.
It really shows the power of a good story, doesn't it?
So, wrapping this up,
Yeah.
what are the big takeaways here?
Well, first, the clear split. Historical Flamel, the real scribe, versus legendary Flamel, the master alchemist. The legend is powerful, but it seems to have emerged centuries after his death.
Built on misinterpretation, later fabrications.
And fueled by the ongoing human fascination with alchemy, gold, and ultimately cheating death. The desire for immortality is a powerful engine for myth-making.
And what about the surprising connections? That's what really struck me.
Yeah, seeing how it all links up is fascinating. You go from real statues in a Paris cemetery,
Which get reinterpreted through an occult lens.
leading to these elaborate,
Ah.
supposedly coded 17th century texts.
Which then inspire modern fiction like Harry Potter. It's this incredible chain reaction across centuries. A relatively obscure historical figure becomes a global symbol of living forever.
And that alchemical language in the Testament, even if it's not authentically Flamel's, it opens a window into that whole worldview where science, magic, spirituality, it was all mixed together. They saw the world very differently.
So why should you, listening now, care about all this?
I think it's a brilliant case study in how stories evolve, how myths are made and endure. It shows how powerfully we yearn for things like eternal life.
And it's a reminder, right, to always look critically at sources.
Mhm.
To ask, where did this story come from? Is it fact or a really compelling legend?
Absolutely. Distinguishing history from myth is key, but also appreciating why the myth was so compelling in the first place.
Which brings us to maybe a final thought. If Flamel's immortality is just a legend, a story we told ourselves, what does that reveal about us? About our own relationship with mortality?
Yeah, what does this enduring fascination with eternal life say about how we view our own finite existence? And you have to wonder, what other historical figures or seemingly factual stories are out there, just waiting to be unpacked, revealing similar layers of truth, legend, and enduring human desire?
Something to chew on. Thanks for that deep dive.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating journey through history and legend.